I've been contemplating this idea of a new system and whether the old system is salvageable and it's the people practicing the system that's the problem, or it's the system itself that's the problem and a new system altogether is needed. And whether or not a new system is needed or the old system can be revamped and refurbished and reformed is beside the point. The point is the system that always works, the system that always lasts, is a system of life. This is a system that supports everything equally without being asked to. So, as in a new system, or in the system I propose, it would be ensuring fresh air, healthy food, clean water, adequate shelter. These are the basis of life itself. And where do we go from there? Okay. How does one accomplish this? First, you have to get the individual to care about the individual. If you don't care about yourself, no one else is going to ever adequately care about you enough to actually accomplish life, your life. Relying on someone else to tell you who you are, relying on someone else to tell you who you are not, is not sustainable. It is not life. What life does is support everything for free. Life works without expecting anything in return. You can walk through the woods, find an apple tree, eat the apple, and move about your way without ever having to pay the tree for the apple or pay the earth for the apple. And yet, the earth and the tree receive their dues. This is through returning to the earth. That which you are is the earth. You cannot actually separate yourself from the earth. Just as the earth has 70% water and 30% land, so the human body has 70% water and 30% dirt. Living the equality and oneness that you already are is part of the solution. Waiting for someone to come up with something that doesn't yet exist is part of the problem. As far as economics is concerned, the idea of a free market, truly free market, where the consumers and not business or government determine the market, is ideal, because that is what nature does. If you'll notice, flowers develop a certain way so that certain consumers are attracted to this flower, and certain consumers are not attracted to this flower. But another flower develops so that the consumers not attracted to this other flower are attracted to the other kind of flower, so that everything is taken care of. So the idea that a consumer-driven market is a free market, free of control, free of debt, is ideal. But this idea of competition that arises from a free market is something that puzzles me, because competition has led to the crisis at hand, in that competition results in monopolies. And whenever a monopoly exists, stagnation occurs, and death starts to accumulate. And there accumulates more death or debt than life or growth. And I was considering, how does one deal with competition so that it can remain and yet not kill itself and kill those who participate in the system? And I was considering this idea of how sports allow competition, but they regulate competition. So that in football you can tackle somebody, but there's this idea of unnecessary roughness. Or in basketball you can be all up on somebody, but there's idea of fouls. And so this idea of competition which does actually appear to make things better and improve and force people to come up with new ideas and adapt, and yet be sustainable to life. Again, nature. The competition of animals never actually wipes out a species. It may wipe out an individual in the species, but the species itself continues. And the only reason a species naturally disappears is through natural selection or perhaps climatic change. No species is ever wiped out by one group of that species being in competition with either more of that species or another species. And so businesses also, they must not wipe each other out. They must not conglomerate to the point of no competition. The result of competition, naturally, is variety. There's thousands, or there were thousands of varieties of potatoes, thousands of varieties of corn, thousands of varieties of tomato. And each little clan of tomato or potato or corn supported a certain population. And when this certain population of potatoes face disease, it may suffer more than those around it, but the species of potato didn't get wiped out. It simply adapted and became stronger. So the 1,000 species as a whole was able to flourish. This is healthy competition. Be right back. Hello. I'm sitting here at the computer. What are you doing? Well, how's that working? Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Yeah. He did tell me that Dee called Connie and Connie told him. Yep. Are you? Okay. Okay. I was wondering if you were going to do something. Yep. I know. I was telling Brian, how much more can she go through? This past year or two. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you. Make sure she knows we're all thinking about her. Okay. Thank you. All right. Brian has a football game he's going to tonight, so he'll be back here maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that. Do you want me to have him call you, or? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes, she does, and she's just a good person. Yep. Yep. Sure. Yeah. Well, I hear you. I will. Okay. I will let him know. All right. Thank you, Cynthia. Bye. The idea that humans do not support themselves, let alone the nature around them, which supports them, whether they think about it or admit it or accept it or not, is also a point that has to change. One of the points that sticks out in my mind is roadkill, and this idea that animals and their natural nightly or daily migrations are being killed, and then the animals that feed on the roadkill are being killed. And not only are the animals suffering, but there is great economic damage to vehicles and people, even to the loss of life. An idea I had was make the roads on a platform. Sort of, just build 10 feet high roads everywhere. Um, this would create jobs in that there would need to be workers tearing up the roads, there would need to be workers rebuilding the roads, and it would be sustainable in that the materials that the roads are made of now could be recycled into the new roads. Also, returning to the idea of railroads, the high-speed railroad is something that is very useful. America and other countries really found their niche through the railroad. It spread the populations out. They were no longer concentrated in just a few cities, but were allowed to concentrate more equally throughout the country. High-speed railroad would allow fresh produce from one coast to go to the other coast within a few hours. No longer would fruits and vegetables have to be harvested too early and the quality be decreased and people forced to pay high prices for food they really don't want in the first place. Another idea as far as sustainable energy is concerned, I'm pretty much against hydroelectric power. This idea that the natural flow of rivers is disrupted for a few 100,000 to a few million people at most, and the detriment of tens of millions of animals is disrupted and destroyed in an unsustainable way is not natural. I support solar power and wind power. I suggest something like filling the Middle East with solar panels. It's got like 12 hours of sunlight 365 days a year. 12 hours of sunlight a day, 365 days a year. Putting the windmills not just wherever people can, but focusing on certain areas that are specifically wind generating areas, tops of mountains, coastlines, areas that can actually support cost-effective wind energy. The idea that corporations are allowed to patent and trademark and copyright has to change. The fact that the standard of living is manipulated by the desire for profit has to change. When oil companies can buy plans for electric cars and hydrogen cars in the 1950s and 60s that could have 2,500 miles to the gallon in the 50s and prevent these cars from being manufactured to ensure the continued need for fossil fuels, and Ford being proud of the F-150 being the car of the future with 22 miles to the gallon is unsustainable. It doesn't support the humans who build it, it doesn't support the humans who drive it, and it certainly doesn't support the earth who supports everything. These are the things that have to change. education. It's not just about free education, because in Britain they have free education and there's still some 20% illiterate students graduating or participating in the school system. So it has to be first in the home where, excuse me, families care about education. Families care about staying informed. Families care about sharing information. And when you have the support of your family, and every family out there is supporting the same thing, there is nowhere you can go without support. And so the idea that there are cracks to fall through become non-existent. The idea of politics in this system of life is one of what I would call anarchy. What I call God is nature. And I'm not talking as a pagan worshiper of nature. I'm talking about that which supports all things and from which all things come, is chaotic. The laws of nature lead to chaos. They do not lead to order. The animals do not have rulers. There is no one king of the elephants. There is no president of the lions. There are family groups, and there are leaders within those family groups, mostly due to experience or physical strength or ability to protect, not because they have the most money or because they look good or because they know what to say in order to get elected, or they were born into this family or that family. Each guide within animals generally has to prove itself. Otherwise, its constituents will chase it out, or they will just simply die through the failure of the ruler or the guide. And this is what I would call sort of anarcho-capitalism, in that each house is the capital. Each family unit is the constituency. And if people learn to implement the natural order, strife can be wiped out, because humans aren't animals. The idea that humans are animals is one of the lies people have been sold in order to keep them caged, in order to limit them and prevent them from rising or being that which they are. So this idea that you have to have a government, or you have to have some sort of governing body telling you what to do, what to think, what to say, what not to do, what not to think, what not to say, is false. If there was to be a central government in this system, I would propose that there is no central capital, but the central government would move from, in the United States case, from state capital to state capital, say a week in each state, and then there would be Puerto Rico, and then maybe a week of vacation. But keeping the center always focused on that which supports it would not allow for what is maybe called centralized decentralization, where the center of politics, that is the individual, the citizen, which supports the system that is to support it, is no longer sold out, is no longer distanced itself from, and can no longer be forgotten. But making sure that the politicians have to stay among the people, and that every citizen has a chance to not only participate in politics, but witness politics in action, will ensure accountability. It will keep things moving. Stagnant water is water that doesn't move. And so stop being complacent. Don't place yourself in one place and think that is going to take care of everything. It obviously just doesn't work like that. It's not just in the United States, but every capital in the world, every federal capital in the world neglects its citizens. And if they were forced to move among the citizens, that would be a lot harder to do. These are just some ideas I've had. Of course, accomplishing them is the hard part. Talking about them is the easy part. And they're always open for discussion. I'm not the only one who has to deal with life. And so anything that can be said should be said. And I'll leave it at that.